Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to the Transform Your Confidence show, where I'm so happy to see you tune in each week on podcast stations everywhere and on YouTube at the Open Chess Confidence Academy. This week, I'm focusing on the media and communications arena, where this past Sunday, I chatted with the founder of RP Communications, Randy Phipps, in part one of a two-part series entitled What You Need to Know When Hiring a Publicist. Here's a bit about Randy before we go into part two of my conversation with him. He's a public relations professional and the founder of RP Communications in Toronto. He has an exceptional eye and a natural talent for storytelling, generating buzz and guiding clients through the ever-changing media landscape. With an extensive roster of award-winning clients, Randy is responsible for representing some of today's most celebrated figures, like legendary singer-songwriter Deborah Cox and pop sensation Mia Martina. Randy's services range from publicity, social media management, content creation, creative direction, and crisis management. Here's part two of our deep dive on what you need to know when hiring a publicist. The great thing that I know about your business, Randy, and I also know about people who are in the service industry, is that everything is about, the referrals and the relationships that you have with your existing clients, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely.
100%. Your client is like your biggest, they're like a walking billboard for you. They're successful, you're successful. People see what they're doing. Their networks are watching them as well. And then that also prompts interest into like, what are you doing? Like, how did you get on Cityline? Like, how did you get that feature in Forbes? Like, what's happening? Let me connect you to my publicist.
Absolutely. And I want to also ask you a question regarding kind of how do you flip as a publicist from one type of PR versus the other, since, you are in a wheelhouse of a boutique enterprise. So you're literally, your fingers and your expertise and your time is going into all aspects of PR, right?
Yep.
So how do you flip between them, considering that? Yeah, please.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question because I actually thought about that. I think about it often because I have different, I don't want to say like tiers of clients because I don't see them like that. Everyone gets the same level of attention. But for instance, if you're dealing with like a well-known celebrity and then you're dealing with like a new brand, it's completely different. So they have to be treated in a different way, where for instance, like a newer emerging brand, you want them to be out there. You want them to do as much media as they can. You want them to just do everything to the highest degree. But then when you're dealing with the celebrity, you're dealing with a lot of requests that are constantly coming in for them, and you're filtering through them to pick the best ones because they've reached that pinnacle of success and that level of their career where you can be highly selective of what happens and where they go and what they do, and you don't want them to get too oversaturated. You want to keep a certain level of exclusivity with them versus like an emerging brand where you want them out there front and center for anything and everything, mostly.
Absolutely. So this kind of, brings me to this whole idea around something that you mentioned off the top of our conversation, one of the forms of PR being kind of crisis management. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that sounds kind of a little hairy for a lot of people who, are themselves innately introverts. They like to stay behind the scenes. Coming out kind of in the forefront isn't really their wheelhouse, but we live in a world where people buy based on emotionality. So seeing who's behind the product is extremely important today. What would you say if you got a client like that came to you and says, look, Randy, I like being behind the scenes. This putting myself out there is a big enough leap anyway. But what if I get this kind of negativity that I have to deal with? How do you deal with that kind of personality? Because I'm sure that you've had some very interesting opportunities to work with some incredible personalities that aren't naturally kind of public facing, right? Yeah.
And you kind of answered your own question. If you're a super private person, PR is not for you. Get a media spokesperson, find someone else in the organization. But if you are nervous and you want to throw up every time you go on television, it's not for you. You definitely have to, I get everyone has nerves. That's natural. We work with you to like media train you to make sure that you're prepared to like be your best self when the camera turns on, or through writing methods. But if you are an extremely private person, that is one of the times I will say PR is not for you. It could be for everybody, but not if you're a highly private person, because your life becomes public and everything that you do is out for public consumption. You could go on television and do a great job, but you will get that person, the keyboard gangster, that's going to tell you that you sucked, or what you said was inaccurate, or, you know, shame you for something because it goes against what they believe or what their opinion is. So you do have to develop a certain layer of thick skin for the industry, because the hate will come at some point, especially the bigger you get.
Absolutely. So say, for example, the hate comes, or, you know, all of a sudden there's just a lot of negative press happening. How do you mitigate something like that? Because I know that that is probably the hardest type of PR to navigate a strategy through. Can you maybe give us one or two kind of insights on that?
It just depends on the type of crisis situation that it is. If it's like a mistake, you know, you have to apologize, you have to take accountability. If it was something that was done at like a misstep, you have to kind of craft a message and stick to the message. And then also like just earn the trust back. But accountability is first and foremost. People connect with that. You know, everybody forgives you if you make a mistake. There's certain exceptions, obviously, like if it's criminal activity. But like, there's a lot of different ways you can kind of like, I don't want to say spin it, because I actually do have a client on my roster who is a formerly incarcerated woman that I've learned a lot from in my career. And since working with her, she was a criminal. She committed a crime years ago. But when you dive deeper into the story, she was at the place where she was at because she was manipulated by a man. So she really isn't a criminal. She took the fall for something, but she went to jail for it. So when she reached out to me for representation, we kind of like discussed it. And my eyes opened so big, because I didn't know that most of the women that are in prison are there because of a man. And I'm like, there's a bigger story to all of this than just the popcorn that you discovered to make while you were in jail, and now you're selling it. This is not about your popcorn. This is about a movement. It's about your story. It's about what you're doing after you left prison. It's about the good that you're doing, what you're putting into the world. So we don't often visit the story and how she got there. She doesn't even want to blame the former partner that got her in the situation. It's what she's doing with it now and what she learned from being in the system and how we can move forward. So that's a really good way to take a situation like that and then kind of like have a whole new message.
So how do you do something like that, Randy? I mean, you know, this is a case study, right? This is something that you've actually done in real life. That's quite an extreme case. If you look at it from someone that is looking at this story from the outside, that doesn't actually know the details and the context around it. So you had to kind of create an entire strategy around how you wanted people to view the story. So what were some of the things that you did to shed the right light on this story and not make it about someone going to prison?
Exactly. Yep. And that was something that she was really candid and open about. She took accountability for what she did. She never made an excuse, because she did commit a crime, whether or not she was manipulated or not. She did commit a crime, but she owned up to it. And we just wanted to focus on what she's doing. The story is just a story. That's part of it. But where she's going and what she's doing with it now, that's where we want to keep the focus, what's happening currently.
Absolutely. I love that. And keep the focus where it needs to go, with the intended split space that you want to go to. So you build your strategy. This is what I'm hearing you say, Randy. You build your strategy around where you want to go, right?
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. So there's a lot of kitschy words out there in the world of media right now, one of which is cancel culture. I got to ask you about this, because that's another one that, you know, publicists have to kind of figure out how to deal with, especially, you know, the larger and the more known the personality, the more difficult that whole challenge becomes. Is there any kind of insights that you can give us around that at all?
I think people should be very cautious in general, not just celebrities or people that have a publicist, even the regular person. Whatever you put out online, whatever you do, everyone has a cell phone camera, you can get filmed. So you have to be really conscious of what you're putting out there. The whole cancel culture, like I think it's been taken to an extreme because literally, once again, it's people behind their computers in their homes that are just dragging people for everything and nitpicking every little thing. And because you're a celebrity or you're a public figure, it's easy for you to try to like knock someone down off a peg, or if they don't, you put them on a pedestal. And then all of a sudden something happens and they fall off the pedestal. We're really quick to like attack people. So I don't fully subscribe to cancel culture. I do think, yes, there's certain things, obviously like abuse, sexual assault, that kind of thing, where that's a completely different ballgame. But I think for the most part, people recover from most of their situations depending on the severity of what it is. And people forget, people are forgiving, and people do forget, and time does heal unless it's like something very serious.
Right. And you know, it kind of answers my next question for you, Randy. I wanted to ask, you know, is all PR good PR? I mean, you know, another kind of thing that people think is the case. I mean, what are your thoughts around that? I mean, is there ever a time when PR is not a good thing? I
think PR is good generally. And when it's not good PR, that's when you have crisis communications.
Right. So either way, PR is a good thing. Whether
to have a publicist on in your Rolodex, for sure.
Absolutely. So when you are faced with negative PR situations, what should a brand or a business or a personality expect from their publicist?
They should expect immediate attention, especially if it's like a crisis or something's happening. They should expect immediate attention, and they should expect a solution in the form of a strategy and a message getting crafted to put out there. And then kind of like, you just need their immediate attention to make sure that that's their primary focus, because you could lose your business overnight. So your publicity team has to be on it if anything happens, and then make sure that there's a solid message crafted and that it's put out there and it's continued to be put out there. And then eventually, as long as it's not a crazy situation, it'll just fade away.
Absolutely.
But it needs to be addressed immediately, first and foremost.
Okay. Anyone that's just joining us, I am talking with the fabulous Randy Phipps. He has a PR company called RP Communications in the Toronto area. He deals with boutique enterprises around personalities, specifically entertainment personalities, as well as personalities in the expert arena. So if, you know, Randy, let's share with people. If anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do it? I mean, you said it's your Instagram. Is that the best way?
Instagram, yep. Instagram is great. It's Randy_Inc, INC_. And I also have a website, www.rpcommunications.net.
Wonderful. So I want to ask you now, so, you know, you're onboarding somebody new, right? That doesn't really have that much knowledge in kind of the PR arena, especially when it comes to how to present their case, you know, and you know this more than anyone else. You could have a 1 minute, you know, segment, or you could be on for an hour on a podcast, right? And being able to navigate that and to stay, you know, inspiring and uplifting and all those things that you want to be, because that's the reason why you are soliciting PR to help you kind of look good in front of people. There's 4 different basic ways that people communicate, right? There's the verbal, there's the non-verbal, there's the written, and there's the visual, right? Yeah. I would say that there's a 5th way, and that is how you exude your energy. So I feel that that is probably more palpable than all of these 4, you know, general, traditional, academic ways of looking at communications. So when you onboard someone, and you've got to kind of factor all these things in, and a lot of people actually don't know how to kind of, you know, how do I look? How do I sound? You know, what am I saying? You know, they can't put those pieces together. How do you help them make sense of that? Because I know that's a huge part of onboarding a new client.
For sure. And as I mentioned earlier, people connect with people. So you have to find a way to kind of make sure that you're out there in a very approachable, down-to-earth manner. Because if you're watching someone on TV or listening to someone on a podcast, you want to trust that person that's giving you the tips or the knowledge or the advice or the product that they're hawking. You want to feel comfortable with them. So it's just a whole energy, like you said, it's totally energetic, where you have to just exude like enthusiasm. You have to be excited about your own product, service, or the tips that you're giving. Because if you're not, people aren't going to connect with what you're saying. If you're just delivering a message, you know, in a really strange tone where you're not enthusiastic, people will just disconnect within like 5 seconds. Body language is also really important to you. You can't be slumped over. You can't have your hands folded like you're super guarded. You have to be warm, welcoming, inviting, and that's just television. Radio, podcasts are a whole different thing. You have to keep your energy super high, because if you're too monotone, if you're too low, if you have no invitations with your voice, people will disconnect within 2.5 seconds. I don't want to listen to someone that sounds drab and dreary. I want to be excited. I want to be energized by that person. I want to be captivated by what they're saying. I want to see facial expressions. I want to see movements. I want to see them looking great. I want to see them really passionate about what they're talking about. So I just try to gas them up as best as I can and just let them know that you just need to like do this, whether it's a 3-minute television segment or if it's a 60-minute podcast. You got to keep your energy level really high. And although you're telling the same story over and over and over and over, and it could be for years, you're still going to have to tell the story for the next 10 years because that's your story. You need to say it with the same level of enthusiasm as you did as when you first told it, right?
Absolutely. I love, love, love that. So what about those clients of yours and people out there who are used to kind of the in-person environment, which is, you know, a lot of what the broadcast scene is about. But now with COVID and a lot of the lockdown situations that we're in, everything's gone virtual. So there's almost like, you know, you're used to being on a, you know, TV segment, a broadcast situation live in studio or, you know, however they tape. And now you have to speak to those same people doing a similar kind of segment, but you're not in kind of the energy of the audience and, you know, the energy of the personalities and the cameras and the lights and stuff. How do you help them navigate through that so that they are still appearing the way that people would expect them to appear if they were in a live, you know, studio audience kind of a scenario?
That's a fabulous question and super relevant because I talk about this with them all the time. For the most part, the clients love virtual interviews because all of them work. So now you can just like pause from a client. I'm just going to do a TV segment for 5 minutes, where before we were taking 2-3 hours sometimes to drive to a station, to wait, to rehearse, to do a mic check, and then to go on. That was like half a day. So now they're just like popping online for the 5-minute segment and they love it because they can do back to back. They can get more quantity banged out. But one of the drawbacks, as you beautifully mentioned, you don't have that connection with the host. You don't have that connection with the producer that you see giving cues. Everything is just like you're online, you're on a screen. So once again, you have to be like super animated and keep your energy up. A lot of the times they're talking to black screens for broadcast. They're not even seeing the person, or the ones for radio, it's just a voice. So once again, the voice needs to match what you're talking about with a certain level of enthusiasm. And you also have to make sure that you're presenting yourself in the right way, because like I said, you're looking at a black screen or you're looking at up here or there. My biggest thing lately, I've been noticing people with these, they're like looking all over the place. They don't know where to look. Like I was looking at TV today. I watch TV every day, like the news channels, and like the guests are like, they don't know where to look. So I tell all my clients, put a sticky note on the laptop, put a sticky note and just look at that. Focus on that. Find one place to look or you're going to have like crazy eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. What a great tip, Randy. So I want to kind of, you know, now that we're coming towards the end of our time together, boohoo. I feel like there's just so much more we need to talk about. And, you know,
so easy. You made this like, honestly, I'm not used to being on this end of it. And I had my trepidations and I know I got to be cool and calm. And like, I encourage people, but now I know how some of the clients must feel because I'm like, I'm being interviewed by Raj. This is like crazy. First of all, I didn't have it in me to say no to you. So I'm like, I have to do this no matter what. But I'm like, this is like for hours, like I just lined myself off for half the day because just preparing and trying to mentally get into that headspace. And you made this so easy. So bless you.
Oh, sweetheart. What a lovely, lovely testimonial. I simply adore you. And I thank you for that. And I think it's probably because, you know, for so many years, I've been talking to personalities to kind of try and get inside of their, you know, safe space, you know, that place that we kind of, you know, keep to ourselves. And, you know, and I've been told that the reason why I've been so successful in that arena is I really don't have any aspect of me that in any way judges the outcome of the conversation, who they are, what they do, why they do it. I'm seriously and very
But that's a
intrigued.
gift. But you're also intimidating because you've interviewed Priyanka Chopra and everybody else. And here's like little old me. Like, so the standard is, the bar is like up here. So it's like daunting. You don't see that because you're very encouraging to people and you speak life into them and you make them feel comfortable. That's why you made it easy. But coming into this with the perception of knowing who you are, what you've done, who you've spoken to, it's like, what did I get myself into?
Well, you rocked it, sweetheart. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
And you know that you're going to come back. I feel so blessed that every single time that I bring someone on, I always want to be able to continue the conversation further with them. So you know that we've got to do this again, and we're going to talk about some other fabulous things, just to kind of be able to help, you know, the audience out there, wherever you are in the world, listening, whether you're watching. I want you to be able to get true value from this show. And that really is my goal. And as Randy mentioned, I've interviewed some, you know, incredible personalities. I've been very fortunate to be able to have had those opportunities. But I'm in a point right now in my life where, you know, my heart and my soul and my personal journey is calling me to really reach out and help everybody out there who, you know, are on this journey that we're all on, that's called life, right? Randy, you know, we're on this journey, and oftentimes, you know, we don't get access to a lot of, you know, elite possibilities and opportunities. And, you know, we feel that, you know, maybe these people are where they are because they get access to really incredible, you know, resources. So my goal, my mission at this point in my life is to be able to give those resources and those access points to everyday people. And that's the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm so happy that someone like you, who is incredibly busy and works with a lot of really incredible high, you know, high demanding, I'm going to say demanding because I say demanding in the most positive way, because if you don't demand excellence from yourself and from those that are in your life, then you are not valuing who you are as a human. So I say that. I say that with pride. I say that with positivity. And I want to close this off, Randy, by asking you, because I think it's important for people to understand that you have to kind of know how to contextualize what you're doing depending on the intention that you're looking to accomplish. So I want to bring this and reel this back in. How is PR different when creating a strategy for a celebrity, an expert, a company, and a not-for-profit? Because you've done all of them. And I know that there are people listening to this and watching this out there that come from one of those wheelhouses, if not more.
Sure. Okay, so let's start with celebrity. For a celebrity PR, their name will get them a lot of access to like the bigger shows, to the bigger outlets, to the bigger publications. But oftentimes they have a product, whether it's an album, a book, a project, anything that's happening that they want to bring attention to, a concert. So it's trying to keep the messaging on point with that, because the outlets will always want to talk about the past versus what they're doing, because people connect with the notoriety that brought them to where they are. So I think when you're doing celebrity PR, it's just a matter of kind of focusing on the project at hand, because the celebrity will always be able to get press, but it's a matter of kind of like promoting what's current, their current project. You want to focus on that. As far as experts go, you kind of want to position you as like the leading expert, the industry expert, the top expert. So we get to the point where the media calls us to comment on things, because you're doing so much work in the field where you're commenting on different things in your niche or your area of expertise. So that's really important. For corporate PR loves brand names and brand mentions. You could be on a show. They will hire someone to go on a show to talk about something else, but as long as you're able to say the company name, they are so happy. Corporate loves brand mentions, brand name recognitions, photos, all of that stuff. They just want to see like visibility of their logo, placements. Like those are the kind of the type of client that will do paid media, because they have a very specific message and they also have the budgets to purchase a segment. In the not-for-profit world, you want people to connect with the cause. You want people to buy into it. You want to create awareness about what's happening, so people want to support the mission. And by supporting the mission, they're pushing the movement forward. So that's kind of like the differentiations of the four.
Wow. Guys, Anyone out there that thought you knew about PR, I feel that you just got schooled right now. I really do, and it's a good schooling. I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you something that I have a question about that I'm not too sure about, Randy, and that is for someone who has a lot that they have to offer. Right. I know you get this, especially with a lot of the kind of high yielding personalities. They have so many different levels of expertise. How do they hone in on kind of being able to dumb it down? And when I say dumb it down, I say simplify the messaging. How do you take all of that, all of this bigness, and kind of bring it down here so that it is digestible when you go out there to sell it?
So first you need to find your niche and your lane, and you have to stay in it. You can't be the every person talking about everything, or it'll dilute your brand. The more specific you are, the higher rate for success you'll have. I have an eating disorder specialist, one of the top, if not the top in Canada. She's a therapist, but she could talk about mental health and like women's wellness and a bunch of different things. But we wanted to position her as just an eating disorder specialist. So when you think of eating disorders, you think of Kyla Fox, because she has a center, she's a personality, she's been talking about this for years, she's done a lot of work to help the whole industry. So you don't want to dilute it by like, okay, she's talking about mental health one day and then talking about this and something else the other day. If you keep it very streamlined, the likelihood of her being the leader in that space is really high. So that's something I would say, like, just make sure that you pick a lane. And then the second part of your question was about
how do you simplify?
Simplify? Yes. Keeping the message simple.
Yes.
Finding the top points that will connect with people. And whether you're an expert or you work in tech, you want to give people digestible information. That's something that's very key. You don't want to be talking in like the technical terms, because people will disconnect from that. You have to think about appealing to the masses, and everyone has a different level of socioeconomic status. You want to just make sure that what you're saying is understood by all, not just the people in your industry, because that's not the people that you're trying to target all the time.
Right. So valuable. Such amazing information. And by now, people aren't bought into the significance and the importance of using PR strategy, using the right publicist. What would you say to them to convince them?
I would say you have a strategy for everything else in your life or your business. You do it for your marketing. You do it for your business development. PR should always be considered, whether it's, you know, at the start to kick things off, or later on when you're ready or you have something that you want to promote. It should always be thought of, and it should always have, you should always have a plan for it at some point.
Randy, what an absolute pleasure. For those of you who just came in at the tail end of this conversation, you know that you need to rewind this back. It is going to be up on our YouTube channel at the Open Chest Confidence Academy. You can also go anywhere that podcast streaming platforms are, and you can go check it out if you search the Transform Your Confidence show. Please do that. It's important that you do, especially if you're looking at, you know, ways in which you can kind of put your brand out there in an authentic, credible, easy to understand and digest, and also in a way where people kind of feel, you know, resonance to you, that they feel that, you know, your energy aligns with what you're talking about and also with what they're looking to get from you. So thank you so much, Randy. I really appreciate it. Absolutely, sweetheart. And let's just tell people again one more time, you know, in case they didn't catch it earlier on, how do they get a hold of you?
Sure. Through my website, www.rpcommunications.net, or through Instagram, Randy_Inc, INC_.
I adore you. Thank you so much.
I love and adore you too. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this.
Thank you so much for staying till the end, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the show and will action the many insights that were shared. If there's one takeaway that you have from my show each week, you know I say this every single week, and I'm going to say it again. In order to create a bulletproof strategy, you must marry knowledge with action and accountability. Without these working together, you are limiting your capacity to actualize your greatness. And trust me when I say that I know this, because I've been there and I know what it takes. to marry knowledge with action and accountability to finally get to where you want to go. So if this is something that you are working towards, or you are trying to inspire your team to work towards, please tune in each and every episode. And as I mentioned before, every Sunday and every Wednesday, we drop new episodes at 9 a.m. PST and 12 p.m. EST. If you found this show to be helpful, I'm so super glad. I would love for you to subscribe on my YouTube channel, as well as on podcast platforms everywhere. And I'd also love for you to share it with everyone you know, because I'd love as many people as possible to get, value from this show. It's the reason I do it. I do it to share valuable insights from varied experts within my wheelhouse and my resource pool, so that you too can get those insights and implement them into your ecosystem. I sincerely appreciate your support, and I really look forward to seeing you next time.